Hello everyone and happy Saturday from Resell Unlimited, where everything but dust is collected. So I wanted to kind of give you a little kind of an introduction to what you're about to watch. I got a few questions from people who were wondering, hey John, where was the Star Wars you said you were going to talk about last weekend? And true, I did say that not only would we be discussing death photos, I also stated that we would discuss Star Wars. So I'm just going to be honest with you and give it to you straight. We did the initial interview first, and it went fantastic. Thank you, Jala. I probably was the most likely to mess that up. And so then I sat down afterwards and recorded the first part. Well, I was pressed for time. And there were several issues with the video. It was shaking one somehow, and going back and editing it, the sync got off between my mouth and the voice, so I looked like Bruce Lee talking about collecting. So geez, so I just I kind of let it fly, and didn't say anything about it, and was hoping maybe people would be okay with it. But nonetheless, few people were curious to what happened to the Star Wars. So. The good news is we were out at the flea market here in Mobile. Today we have a permanent spot. This weekend was our first weekend. Today was our first day. So with that said, I was really busy, and I did not, because we were moving things in obviously and trying to get a plan in place that we could really get behind. And so I didn't really get to record anything, and it worked out well. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to chalk it up to live and learn. And besides, I try to be a lighter side of things, I guess. So I'm going to play you the unedited, the version of the original cut that as it was supposed to be before I aired it last Saturday. So enjoy, have fun laughing at me. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of jokes about from people saying I was Bruce Lee or something. Anyway, peace and happy Saturday. Well, hello everybody, it's finally here, the first episode of Everything But Dust. Well, that didn't go over as well as I thought. This is a Noble and Cooley toy piece. It's called a one-man band, made in the 50s, kind of beatnik design it had. I found this in the Smoky Mountains. My wife and some friends were there, and we stopped at a antique store, as always, when you're with me. And they had this, so I picked it up. I think it was, it's less than $10, let's say that. Okay, so, as you know, we've got a lot to cover on this, the first episode of those who are not familiar with it. It is a show about collection. The collections we don't know about, and I am forever discovering new collections I had no idea about. So it promises to be a very informative, entertaining, enlightening show. So thank you for those that have joined us. If you have not had a chance to, please like us at the bottom. Happy, joy. Okay, so before we get started, as you know, we're going to cover Star Wars, my favorite, as you can tell. And we're also going to end the show with an interview with a young lady who collects death photos, and I'll let her explain that. But before we get started, someone had asked me, what do you sell, as yardsellinc.com? That was not a commercial. And I guess since I've started the business, that answer has actually shaped itself. So when people ask me, John, what do you sell? Generally, my answer is, I don't know. What do you buy? I don't want to put any kind of restrictions on it because it's ever-changing, especially when you sell collectibles or vintage or antiques. I will sell what people need within reason, as long as it's not illegal or immoral by my definition. Then I'm open to anything. It's part of the reason our legal business name is Resell Unlimited LLC, is because we know that it's an unlimited plethora of things that can be resold. Things that haven't even been made one day will most likely become something that is resold. We, as humans, have the hardest time just disposing of something, junk.
and it's a gradual approach to the dump, and being another way that we have found to dispose of it, where we just swap junk, is pretty. The other question I get asked a lot is, John, what do you collect? That is something I had never thought about, and so I did. I gave it a lot of thought. I I collect collections. I don't, again, put any restrictions on what I collect. Big Beatles fan. If you know who the Beatles are, but I collected all things Beatles. I had a lot of Beatles. People knew this. I was easy to shop for. Christmas, birthdays, overflow of Beatles. I kind of got burned out on Beatles. There's anything nowadays. There's too much of. I would love to be able to collect the old Beatles, like the souvenirs and things they made in the 60s, but as most collectors will know, they're expensive. And I find that really people aren't, tripping over themselves to get rid of it, because the Beatles are cool, right? Now, I do collect a little of the first three prequels that he did. They're not, in my opinion, his best. Conspiracy theory-wise, it's his fault. Everything's going to hell, really. It's Jar Jar Binks. I still get the pajamas, which I like, clothes, things that I'm not going to be decorating, but I don't live, eat, and breathe Star Wars. I think a lot of my love for the collection is really from the retail history of it, because as a lot of people know, George Lucas didn't make too much money on the first movie, but where he really played it smart was he got all the rights to the merchandise. Went, as many people know, to Kenner. They had success with the $1 Million Man toy lines. And so one thing led to another, and it ended up being one of the most historical, long-lasting brands as far as toys. Towards the end, I think George had stopped making the movies. So, and away went Star Wars. So what we're going to talk about this evening is, as I told you in one of the previews, I had ordered some Star Wars. I, at the time, was waiting for it to come in. And many people that collect Star Wars, we all tend to gravitate towards the figures and the action accessories like the X-Wing fighter, Millennium Falcon, so on and so forth. And that's great. I do too. I'm not one of those that I lock it up and I have a grade on it. That, in my opinion, that takes the fun out of it. I'm forever encountering people who see my collection and they ask if they can touch a toy. The reason I love them, and so many do, is because we remember it from our childhood. So, personally, I can't see having fun with something that I'm worried about getting a nick or something. Find out what John bought. So, as I said, I didn't go with the figures and all this go around. What I did do was kind of steer towards the things that other people weren't really looking at. And what that afforded me was an ability to discover unique things, and there's a lot of it, because George went crazy with merchandising. But it also allowed me to get some really, really good deals. So first off, one of the things I think is commonplace, so you may have them or you've seen them, they're not rare. But I think what makes them unique, other than the fact you can get them for little of nothing. Okay, so you have this, I got lucky. This is one that had never been played, really. It's kind of new, used, as they call it. It's a cassette, which was unique to me because I have the records, the 45s, and I remember getting them. I actually remember going to like Kmart to the record section while my dad went over to the country. I went and looked at the kids' side, and that's when Star Wars was out. I didn't realize they made cassettes. It makes sense now, but I was always looking at the records. I don't even recall seeing the cassette tapes at the time, and I don't think I was even listening to tapes at that time. This was before Teddy Ruxpin and Walkman and things like that. So as a kid, I knew records. My father listened to them, had a really nice turntable. I would buy records, and that's how I would listen to the Star Wars things as well as other kids' albums. So I saw this, and I was like, oh, wow, that's neat. I know this, but I didn't know it came in cassette form. And it's a win-win on two areas, I believe, in my opinion, and that's because, number one, it's Star Wars, it's vintage. Number two, media is becoming a popular, and it has been for a while, a popular collection. So whether it's reel-to-reel tapes, of course vinyl, and I think vinyl is going to get better. It's one of those long life collectibles. And for those who are young that maybe collect it, those who don't, I feel, and I've heard this from many people, we collect vinyl because there's just a sound to it you can't replicate. It's got a quality that many think is better than CDs, you know. So I got this because it was media. I had never seen one, but I was familiar with the storybooks, and it didn't cost me much of anything. So it's not rare. You could probably find them, so be on the lookout for these. These are vintage. Speaking of media, the other thing I didn't even realize, never thought about, but I saw one of these, and this is not Atari. This is actually Parker Brothers, and this is right around the time that Empire Strikes came out, so that'd be 1981 or so, I guess, for this particular game. I don't believe it has a date on it. Well, yes, it does. 1982, 1983. Okay. So Parker Brothers had a video game kind of competing in that whole Atari craze, and at the same time the Empire Strikes Back had come out, so they put this out. Now this was really inexpensive, and shipping of course was very cheap because one, it's weight, and it's media, so they can send it media. But I thought it was unique. I haven't seen too many of these now. I do see the Ataris. You can get those fairly readily available. So I thought this would be a good investment because, again, it's media, it's gaming. Gaming, oh my gosh, everybody knows that's just going crazy. Even young people who only know the new gaming, they're becoming interested in the old gaming because it's, you know, kind of historical, knowing how it all got started. Whereas old people like me, we were there. So go figure. I mean, shoot, I was throwing the controller across the room in 1981, you know, just determined I was never going to play it again, and then I did, so, because I'd finally get over the fact it beat me. So I think this is going to have staying power too, because it's media, it's Star Wars, but the twist on this is I really think because it's not one of the popular Ataris or Nintendo brands, it's a Parker Brother, and of course they didn't really become mass gaming brand, but because they made kind of an offshoot attempt to compete, I think it's going to make it, I get kind of like the Edsel of gaming, right? You know, any car enthusiasts? So that I picked up for little of nothing. This one was interesting to me. Now, I just recently discovered how much of the jewelry that was out there at the time, 1977, and there's a lot of pendants you can get. Darth Vader, I believe, Yoda, C-3PO. Really unique looking pieces. You can pick them up for, you know, little of nothing. But this I had not seen, and I'm assuming it belonged to the company that made them. I can't think of the name, guys. I apologize. But it's the rings. So what they were is little rings. You've got C-3PO here, R2-D2 over there, and then in the back the one and only Darth Vader. So it's a little ring, you know, just cheap made ring. Well, I don't know. Their idea of cheap back in '77 was, to me, it was good quality compared to today. But it's adjustable, but not that thin metal that you would think of now that you could almost break it if you bend it too much. And this particular one had never been used. I mean, it just, you know, it was remarkable. And it was a best offer. I always look for best offers because, you know, my thing is even if it's at a good price, if it has best offer, you can pretty much bet you're going to get it for a better price, you know. I advise everybody, be fair about it. You know, as a seller myself, I have gotten some offers that, you know, they're ridiculous. The person buying it knows it's worth more. It's almost insulting. I've received an offer for $1. Guys, we have to make a living. Stuff costs money. But, you know, at the same time, you wanna try. So my advice with best offers, okay, and sellers out there, please do not bombard me with hate messages. But this isn't magic, you know. We're not keeping this big secret, so the illusion is it's business. But with the best offer, your best bet is to go ahead and know what your max is that you would pay. Maybe it's already the price they have set. If not, then know what the maximum you're willing to pay, and you have 4 goes at it. Okay, if they decline. And you want to, I always say you can never go wrong being nice. You know, I like getting a best offer that has a message. maybe it'll say, whatever your offer is. I'll cover shipping if it's free shipping, say, for example, or what have you. But at the very least, you want to say, the way I do a lot of my responses is, hello from Alabama to wherever they are, So you always get off on a good foot when you put something to make it personal, Hey, like this item, I really like your store, would you be willing to do this? And then make your offer. It's a nice touch, and I think it'll go a long way in trying to maybe change their mind. Maybe they would have declined, but they're like, well, you're so friendly, sure, I'll do it. So if you make that offer and they decline, do not fear. You have more opportunities. That does not make them a bad person. Sometimes they have what they call auto decline, which means that because a store is so busy, there's so many items, they may not be available to get to you. So actually, for your convenience, they'll go ahead and set an auto accept, which means that if you hit that mark, it automatically accepts and you're the winner. If you're below their bottom line, it's going to auto decline. But a lot of people aren't aware of that, so they get that decline back quick, and they're like, wow, you're mean. No, it's actually to your benefit. You like that. What you don't want is the person that you make an offer and they'll tag you along, which, I've done it myself. The reason they do it is because they have your purchase if they change your mind, but they want to give it a couple of days and see if somebody else hits on it. So trying to give you a little idea behind what the thinking is behind both sides. But whenever possible, I try to go ahead and give them a quick decision because I know, people may want to have a decision fairly quick. So just be aware of that. All right, so what you want to do is go ahead and know your bottom line. Maybe you want to get it. You don't mind, so go ahead and tell them what your max is. Don't drag it on. But if you're really trying to get the best deal, then you want to know your max and then start with your lowest without insulting the seller. Or be realistic about it. A lot of times I know that we're out there, we're shopping for things, and we know our product that we're collecting. So if you know your product, be realistic and fair about it. But at the same time, we as sellers have to understand the art of wanting the best deal. Kind of off topic, just as a thought, I find it amazing that the psychology behind consumerism is, let's take this item, all right? We'll go ahead and use this item as an example. If I'm selling this item, I want this much, right? Okay. Flip that around, and now I buy this item, the same item, and I go to buy it for the same amount I would have wanted to sell it for, and I go, wow, that's just way too much. Think about that. Really think about that. So if we as collectors and as sellers realize that we have that kind of double standard when we do things, we always want the most when we sell it, and we want to get it for the least, And I think there's a good happy middle ground. It doesn't have to be a matter of contention or bitterness or things like that. It's like they say about games. It's just a game. It's just a hobby. All right, so moving right along, and last but not least. Now, this was a great deal, but this, by no stretch of the imagination, is this, cheap. You're not going to find them often. If you do find them, for little or nothing. And I had never known anything about it. I'm still learning about vintage clothing. Of course, I am surrounded by a lot of experts that do that. And so I'm getting an education. But I discovered that there was a brand of shoes, first and foremost, called Clark's. And I don't remember them. They may have been when I was a kid. But they were the only, at the time, brand that was making the Star Wars clothing. They were the first. And so they made these really neat children's shoes. Guys, I was shocked when I found them. When I found the few pairs that I did, they were like $200+ if they had the box with it, if they have like everything with it. Oh my gosh. I mean, you have to realize this is 77. Nobody was thinking about collecting shoes. Yeah, we were thinking about collecting baseball cards even back then, but not shoes, not even Star Wars. We'd never heard of it. It'd just come out. But this first pair that I got, and I won this at auction, this is the Tusken Raider. So each pair of shoes, I forget, let's see how many they had. They had several pairs you could buy, and each pair represented a character, and the style reflected that. So these were brown leather, and they were the Tusken. And so what's funny about these shoes, and the two pairs I got, they look like platform shoes, So it's like little pimp going to, walking to school, man. He's the coolest kid in the world. He's got the new shoes. This is before they were making movie character shoes, I believe. I don't think they had really done that. It was usually figures and toys, not clothing. So on the back, you have their star, which is part of the emblem, and then on the here you can see Star Wars, and then on the side it has the Tusken Raider logo. That's pretty neat. And now they came in these shoes. Mine, I was fortunate enough to get a shoe box with each pair. One box didn't have the lid. So Star Wars, and they had the C-3PO, R2-D2. So that's really neat. It says "May the Force be with you." And these are definitely rare because, like I said, people were not thinking about keeping them, number one. Number two, they're shoes, they're clothing. We wear that out more than anything else. So what are the chances? And the movie was so new at the time. I don't know how long they issued these shoes out. The second pair that I got, this is my favorite. This is what actually drew my attention to it at the time. This is the C-3PO pair. Check that out, right? It's like gold. I mean, now you're really fly. You are so fly. You're just way out there fly, kid, because you've got this gold platform-looking shoes. Now, these on the back, as you can see, they say Star Wars on the back. They say Star Wars on the shoe. They don't say C-3PO anywhere, but I don't think you had to really spell it out for people. That's, pretty obviously gold fly C-3PO, right? So I bought those. I had to. I really went out on a limb, got in an auction, was lucky, didn't have any competition really, and got them for little or nothing. I mean, I could sell one pair and make my profit there and still keep another. But I'm going to hold on to them because I think it's so neat. I knew nothing about them. I was like, what? I knew about lunch boxes. I knew about the books, the figures, of course. Never, ever had I known about the shoes, and I just happened to be researching vintage Star Wars, looking at the shirts, actually, and I came across these. I was like, wow. So, got lucky. So there you go, guys. That's some of the new stuff, and we'll do that periodically moving forward, talk about some of the Star Wars and things, but this episode, I just wanted to kind of talk about the unsung heroes of Star Wars collecting, something other than the figures. So I hope I gave you some good ideas. If you have any questions about any of what I've shown you, feel free to put something in the comments, and though it is pre-recorded, we'll go back and review it. And you can always email me at resellunlimitedforyou@gmail.com. That is resell, RESELL, for you @gmail.com. All right, so now for the moment everybody's been waiting for. They've been dying to see. That just didn't work. I'm no good with this thing. We're going to now go to the other me, pre-recorded, interviewing a young lady by the name of Jala. Now, Jala and I have been friends for a while. I've known her sister and family, and I just recently found out she collected these death photos. And so she was nice enough to sit down with me and run her reputation by sitting with me and tell us a little bit more about it. I did a little bit of research as well before the interview, so I learned a lot. And I've included at the bottom, you will see some links. And those links will take you to sites that can give you some more information about death photos, the history of it, where it started, and why people collect them, okay? So you don't have to necessarily put the kids up. There's nothing grisly about this. There may be one or two photos, which will be probably from the Victorian age, of death photos, so you can see an example of it. Now, again, it is going to be a corpse, but you may not even notice, or if you came across it, you may not have even realized it was a death photo. Creepy. So I hope you enjoy. I want to thank my friend Jala for being my first guest on this show. And again, guys, be sure to like on the bottom. Here, see the like button, like button. Use the first.